and welcome to a special Friday Total Soccer show. I am Daryl Grove, and I'm joined by a man who watched USA Cuba, so you don't have to. It's Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello. You can add hate to the front of that. Hate watched USA Cuba. Yeah.
Yeah, how long did it take you into this game before you were not happy about it?
I think right around...
Because I felt it in the room, if I'm honest.
Right around the time that it was evident that Christian Pulisic felt the exact same way.
Right.
That's about when I was like, okay, cool. So they don't want to watch this either. They don't want to be a part of this either.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
Oh, okay, so if you haven't seen it...
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
USA beat Cuba 2-0. Goals from Chris Wondolowski, you heard that right, and Julian Green.
You heard that right.
With an assist from Chris Wondolowski.
Yeah.
But really, we went into this thinking, what can we learn from this, going into Mexico, all that kind of stuff. And we understand that Cuba's not the highest quality opposition.
Right.
As soon as we saw the surface of this field, I think we knew that this game almost wasn't going to count as a real game. But I'm willing to go that far. The surface was that bad, so bumpy, that it was almost impossible to play any type of proper soccer.
And I blame Jurgen Klinsmann for this, because he suckered me in with this lineup.
Is that right?
Because when they announced these friendlies, I think both of us... Like, you said it to me with the appropriate level of no enthusiasm, of like, hey, they've announced the friendlies. It's Cuba and New Zealand? And we're like, okay. And then I think both of us kind of, again, that's why we had the things we wanted to see were very much like a plan for the future, and maybe this guy gets some minutes, but nothing specific, because I don't think that you can take away any lasting...
Mine were pretty specific.
Yeah, but I mean, you can't take away any lasting... Like, oh, Christian Pulisic didn't look interested. Does that mean he's done with the U.S. national team?
Because it always has that grain of salt over it.
Right. But so that was my approach coming in, and then that lineup came out. And that was pretty much the exact lineup I would have liked to see. I wanted to see Julian Green. That was one of my things I wanted to see.
Yeah.
I was excited to see Altidore and Bobby Wood. I was excited to see Ethan Horvath. I was excited to see Brooks and Cameron as that center-back partnership.
Yeah.
It all looked good. Kleshton and Bradley in the middle. And then, as you said, it cut to the game. And there was that pitch, and it was like, oh, no.
And we knew before the ball even rolled, as soon as you got like a semi-close-up of the surface, you could see there are sort of basically bumps and bumps and bumps and bumps. It looked like goosebumps on your arm is what that field looked like. With the same, if you've got like a semi-hairy arm, but with some patches where there are no hair, that's what the grass was like as well, right?
Yeah.
Clumps of grass.
Maybe some glass.
Maybe glass on check, and some just dirt. And it was an absolute mess. And you saw any time the ball rolled across the surface, you saw it randomly just pop up and pop back down. Impossible to play good soccer on that.
My somewhat kind of informed opinion on that field is that it looks like what we're used to is like a uniform type of grass or a uniform blend of grass that's installed and grown intentionally, and that's what players play on. This felt more so like they used whatever grass they could to kind of fill in those clumps, and that's why, because it wasn't necessarily overgrown, because it had been mowed, but you still had patches that stuck up, and it was growing in odd patterns, and it definitely was not a cultivated field, which, again, you shouldn't expect when you're going to Cuba. I mean, there's a reason why this was such a big deal.
I really did.
Really?
Yeah. And even if you look at the stadiums, because we did some research afterwards, there are better surfaces and stadiums available, but they're mostly used for baseball.
Right.
That's the point, right? This is the soccer stadium that they mostly... I mean, it's clear that soccer's the second-class sport in Cuba, right? Because there's that, I'm not saying magnificent, but there's a much better stadium, but it has artificial turf in it. Yeah.
That's where like the Baltimore Orioles played in '99, and I think there was a game this past year that Obama went to.
Right.
That was the big spectacle.
Yeah, that's the big baseball stadium.
And I think it's worth maybe bringing it up because I don't yet want to talk about the game. The story about how they knew that the Russians were there working with Cuba is they got the aerial photographs, and Kissinger saw soccer fields and said, no, Cubans play baseball.
Right.
Soccer fields are for Russians. And that was like really one of like the solidifying proof that they were there. But yeah, so I mean, it could have definitely been a better field. But again, I just think that U.S. soccer maybe should have known that this was going to be the case, and maybe those players should have been properly prepared for this, because one of the first anecdotes we got from Ian Dark was that there was no running water in the stadium. So the players had to get ready in their hotel and then travel there. And that seems like nothing because we're not professional athletes. But if you're a pro athlete who has their kind of set way they go about getting ready, and if you want to go in the locker room and kind of like rinse off and then put on your jersey and be ready to go.
Yeah, players have their pre-match routine that verges on superstition sometimes, right? I remember Paul Ince wouldn't even put his jersey on until he was on the field.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why they have those training jerseys, as like silly in marketing as it might be. It's so that you can get warmed up, change out of stuff that's like now soaking wet, change into your fresh uniform, and maybe get ready to go physically.
Yep.
And if you can't do that, it can mess you up and put you in a weird rhythm and put you in a weird funk. And I think some of those players from the start just look like, okay, this is 90 minutes I have to get through. then we can go enjoy Cuba for the evening, and then we're leaving at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Right. Before we get into the specifics of what happened in the game, I want to talk about sort of maybe the players' approach to this.
Sure.
It really seemed to me like this was a thing of, especially in the second half, it seemed like, all right, this is sort of a goodwill friendly, is what Ian Dart kept calling it. I do feel like he was handed a note at some point.
A historic goodwill friendly.
Do you feel like that's incorrect grammatically?
Yep.
Do you feel like he was...
I said it mostly to annoy you.
handed a note to remind people that this is historic instead of this is a serious game? Because the players... There are certain times when they didn't look interested, and we'll point out key examples. The main guy I'm looking at is Christian Pulisic, who really, I think he started the game like in a good mood. We saw him chasing things down to begin with. And then after 10 minutes or so, I think after the first foul and the first time the ball had just popped up unexpectedly, you really kind of saw him be like, ugh.
Yeah, I think that ties in with Brian Strauss, friend of the show from Sports Illustrated, wrote a write-up of this game, and his point was basically that it looked like the U.S. had the game plan of build out of the back, possession through the middle, Bradley and Kleshton combine. We'll see what Kleshton can do in a start since he's looked so good lately. And that kind of immediately was dead because of that field.
Right.
And I think
it ended up a lot of Bradley sort of chipped or driven long balls, hoping that someone gets a flick on or a header.
Right. And so in those first few minutes, I think you see that enthusiasm from Pulisic because it's like, yeah, we're executing the game plan. I'm staying wide. I'm
starting
at the top.
for the US, which is still somewhat of a novelty, right?
And then I think very quickly it becomes that game plan isn't going to be a thing that we can execute. It is going to be long balls, but they're not going to be that accurate. It's going to be on a rough field. You're going to get run into.
You're going to get fouled, Christian.
You're going to get fouled. You're going to accidentally dribble out of bounds a couple times. And I think you slowly saw him go from like I'm up for it to I'm frustrated by this to hands up like what can I do?
This doesn't happen in Dortmund.
And then eventually just resignation. Yeah, and I guess
this got to be the worst field he's ever played on.
Yeah, I think
it's gotta be, right?
Ever, right? Because I mean, he's playing at an incredibly high level at such a young age.
Yeah, they have running water in Hershey, Pennsylvania.
Right. But even those fields in Hershey,
but
even those fields in Hershey, like he was playing at an elite level from when he was like 9,
yeah,
probably, and so you're playing on good fields at that age. So maybe since he was like 8, this is the worst field he's played on.
So it seemed to me that he was the one that dealt the worst or dealt the least well with the situation. And I want to say that's partly down to age, right? He's the youngest guy out there. He's only 18 years old. Of course he's the youngest guy out there. Only 18 years old. But does it give you any sort of cause for alarm? Because we kind of knew he was coming out at half-time because his game had sort of spiraled down to the point where he couldn't even control a ball that maybe other players could have controlled. You know what I'm saying?
Somehow, no.
Does it not make you worry for like those away hex qualifiers that might not be on great fields?
No, because I think, and the reason why I say somehow no is not because like I'm usually very critical, but it's because I'm going to be critical of other players for doing the exact same thing.
Right.
But I think with Pulisic, because it seemed like it maybe came about slowly versus from the start.
As in he didn't go into it being like, well, I'm not up for this.
Yeah, and I think also because he's an attacking player, so it's sort of... That is kind of the benefit of being the attacker, right? Is like, yeah, you might get a few opportunities, but as long as you take one, that's what people remember is the time you scored and not the time that you shot wide, generally speaking. So I think I can forgive him a little bit for that, and then I think I can forgive him and some of the players for just being like, why are we here? like
did you get that vibe? Like to put this in context, we do not ever criticize professional players for being like, oh, they're not putting in enough effort, that kind of thing, because that's such a rare thing to actually happen. This is one time when these guys were not fully focused on sort of maximum performance in this game. It was more like, let's get this done and get out of here.
I mean, St. Vincent...
Let's not get injured.
St. Vincent made it farther in World Cup qualifying than Cuba.
Yeah.
And you know how badly the United States beat St. Vincent. You wouldn't schedule a friendly against St. Vincent away. That's not something that you would do. And so, I mean, this is roughly the equivalent of that. And so for outside of political reasons... I don't see like a competitive reason other than I guess it's CONCACAF opposition, but it still doesn't seem like it's that worthwhile. And
it's not much preparation for Mexico.
No, definitely
it's
not.
It's just potentially getting injured for Mexico. There were a couple of tackles on Pulisic who could have been like a bit of an ankle injury, that one in the corner, easily, right?
And I have to say, while scrolling through Twitter, I saw all the photos. John Arnold was posting photos of Mexico preparing for their friendlies at Nissan Stadium. I forget what Nissan Stadium is, but just this immaculate field, this giant stadium, and it was like,
New Zealand, right?
See, that makes sense. They're playing on a nice field, getting ready for like decent opposition who have been to a World Cup. So, I mean, or recently.
Unbeaten at World Cup.
Yes. So, I think with that in mind, it's hard for me to say like, oh, I really wanted to see more from Christian Pulisic because I can understand being young, being kind of frazzled just by the conditions and the situation, and then just getting knocked about a bit.
One thing that concerns me is I know the field was wobbly, but why was the US's back line so wobbly?
I have no answer for.
Literally, in terms of them holding a straight line for offside, there were so many times where like Jeff Cameron was stepping behind everybody. A better team, I think, would have absolutely exploited that offside trap.
Yeah, I mean, so Cuba hit the post twice, and I think both of those easily could have been goals, and not just because like, oh, an inch to the left, an inch to the right, and it's a goal, because those sequences were kind of like the backup plays to the first play, like where the guy ran offside or this guy didn't play the ball quickly enough.
And a better player would have played him through, right?
Absolutely.
Before he was offside.
And if you we freeze framed it, and I almost took a photo, but it would have bummed me out too hard. But you had 4 different U.S. defenders in 4 different positions, none of whom seemed to really know where everybody else was, except for Jeff Cameron, who was sprinting across. But he was the deepest of the 4, and he was keeping 2 guys on side. So that's the part that I think is less forgivable. Christian Pulisic being frustrated, being young, being an attacker, versus being a defense, you kind of expect them to know how to just stand in a line.
Did you feel as well like the US let the game be stretched? From goal to goal, the US defense didn't come with the rest of the team.
Yeah.
So we didn't get up on top of Cuba because the defense didn't come with the midfield. And then when we broke, there was this huge gap between midfield and defense. I don't understand why we allowed that to happen.
What I think happened, again, this is just from watching the game live and then watching a couple chunks of the replay, would be that they had this approach where I think they were going to do what they usually do, which is build from the back. Michael Bradley will be the general. Sasha Kljestan will be the creator. We'll pacey guys out wide who can create things, and then a good goal-scoring partnership who are capable of doing things. Very quickly, that's not going to work anymore. We can't pass the ball. We saw it a couple different times, even when the United States does eventually score. I think Sasha Kljestan has to take 3 touches on the ball, when usually that would have been 1 touch and then it's a pass.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of second and third touches that needed to be taken.
Just to get the ball under control, right? Not because of a lack of technique. I feel like Neymar would have had to take extra touches on this field.
Right. And I think so then with that, you then have to reevaluate your game plan. But then I do think that it comes into play of why? You're playing against Cuba away in a friendly that it has no competitive meaning behind it. So I think if you're Jurgen Klinsmann, it's going to be really difficult to be like, okay, guys, we're changing everything. I want you to go here. I want you to go here. It's more like kick the ball long, out the door, try to win the header. Bobby Wood, run onto the long ball over the top. Christian Pulisic, run onto the long ball over the top. Julian Green, shoot whenever you possibly get a chance. And it just sort of and I think it became exactly what I didn't want to see, which is that the United States relying on superior physical and technical ability rather than team play.
A couple of those moments, right, like Bobby Wood nearly scored in the first half because he kind of ran through people.
Yeah.
And I remember in the preview you were saying this is exactly what you didn't want, was for the US to only score through just being faster and stronger in certain situations.
And so all of that is to say, I'm not upset, I'm not angry, I'm not this was a terrible performance. It's just sort of it's tough because it's a situation that doesn't really matter. It's like being mad that you temporarily can't get a cab, or your Uber is 7 minutes away instead of 4 minits away. It's I'm not mad because it's still fine, but it's still frustrating.
So the perfect example is it said it was 4 minutes, which was the trip to Cuba. We didn't think it was going to be some great game. But then somehow the driver you see on the way maybe makes a wrong turn, and suddenly it goes from 4 minutes, and now it's 7 minutes. And they've made it a longer wait time. And you're like, oh, I get it, but...
Listeners, the irony of complaining about an Uber while talking about Cuba is not lost on me.
Why?
Well, just because I'm pretty sure Uber is a long way off in Cuba. So, I'm aware that they're and that's why I'm not trying to be critical of the situation in that stadium and the infrastructure there, because there are obviously more pressing infrastructure needs when it comes to Cuba, specifically right now, with a large hurricane.
And isn't that part of the sort of the reason for this game, right? Is to have this game as a gesture of goodwill, right?
Yeah.
But also, when Uber comes to Cuba, it should be called Cuba.
Oh, that's... I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong, but you know what Walter Sobchak says about that situation. Or maybe that's what the dude says about Walter Sobchak, and I'll leave it at that.
Well, speaking of bad language, we got a blast of it from Jurgen Klinsmann.
We did.
When Steve Birnbaum took... basically a cleat to the head, right, from Espinoza, number 7, I believe, came off the bench. Really unforgivable to have your foot that high and challenging for the ball. But we heard Klinsmann yell at the referee, basically to question his vision with a swear word in the middle.
Yeah, when you have a stadium with a running track that's already kind of sparsely attended and the microphone is right next to the coach, maybe want to put that game on a 5-second delay because you're going to hear some language. And we did. As Ian Darke kind of apologized for.
But again, I think that's an example of how... I actually don't know what the situation is with Birnbaum, because he didn't come back on the field, did he? He definitely has a cut on his head. I hope he doesn't have any sort of concussion, because that would be obviously not a good thing to have. But that's a risk of injury in this game that you actually has come true, right? A player has got injured in this game.
Also, it just now occurred to me that, and maybe that was like an exaggeration in the way Ian Darke explained it, but if you have a player bleeding from the head and you have no running water in the stadium, not great at all. And again, that is where I think that comes back to like U.S. Soccer maybe should have done a bit more due diligence and a bit more research and been like, oh, this is not okay. This needs to be changed, or we need to get some situations in place. And maybe they did, but overall, like, you would probably want some free running water so Birnbaum can maybe wash the caked blood off of his head.
Well, you could probably use bottled water. That's what they would have done.
You could. But then you're not taking a shower right away.
Should we get more positive and talk about the U.S. goals? Because
Sure.
the U.S. did finally score in the 62nd minute, and it was that man that all of the U.S. relies on, Chris Wondolowski. And
You just want hate mail, don't you?
I'm with Chris Wondolowski in a weird way. Like, I want the best for him.
Well, Taylor Twellman and Ian Darke agree. He redeemed himself.
It was a good finish as well, because this was a ball that was sort of, he had to reach to get to, but he still managed to sort of, I don't know, like lock his foot and get like a really firm half volley on it. And it did have some similarities with the Belgium miss. So it's nice to see that hit the back of the net.
Yeah, sure. Belgium, Cuba, pretty much the same opposition.
I'm just saying, Christian Pulisic played right wing for 45 minutes. No goals. Wondolowski played a right wing for 45 minutes, goal and an assist.
Yeah,
and honestly, it does go to the idea that I'm not saying Wondolowski is a better footballer than Christian Pulisic, but he is maybe at this point a better professional.
Yeah.
Right? A more experienced and better professional, handled that situation better.
He did. I mean, and then you talk about that Birnbaum cleat to the head. It was Wondolowski who was talking to the official in a animated but not like overly animated way,
just the right level,
and
right?
Then Michael Bradley stepped in and sort of like had the same words, I think. And I said at the time, like, that's why he's probably here, is to be that leader who can step in, talk to the referee, but can also control things and also still combine with his MLS associates, because that's where Jordan Morris's almost goal came from.
Right.
Was the nice flick on, Wondolowski plays him right back in, and then Jordan Morris maybe just can't quite get to it. Maybe the field isn't quite the way he expects it to be.
It's either Jordan Morris's left foot or it's the field. I think it's the combination of the two combines for the ball going loose.
But so there's that play, and then there's the goal, as you mentioned. It's a good volley from a tight angle. And I think Chris Wondolowski did impress. Again, it's hard for me to say that like that means anything going forward.
Yeah, it doesn't now mean we should start Chris Wondolowski against Mexico, right? It's more just that like he was useful, his maturity was useful in this situation, which I believe is what people were talking about anyway. Like, the reason he's on the roster is to be that experienced head. So at least it was useful.
We talked about not being like sports radio earlier in the week. If you wanted to be sports radio, you would have just said Chris Wondolowski should absolutely start, because that's really like, you would take that position, you'd say, oh, he scored a goal, he got an assist, he looked the most enthusiastic player on this team. I just want to see what
he's
he can
earned
do
it, Taylor. He's just earned it.
I mean, he's got the passion, he's got the heart. I want to see what he can do, because I just don't know if other players are up there with him.
I'm scared by how accurate your sort of facsimile.
Welcome back to Sports Talk. No, so I mean, I agree with you that I don't think he's like cemented his role as a starter, but it was definitely a solid performance from Wondolowski.
So let's talk about maybe some other positives. That move, I want to say that move for the first goal starts with a tackle from Timmy Chandler.
You want to say it, or you're going to say?
I want to say it, but I do. I have to because I was looking. One of my things I was looking for in this game was for Timmy Chandler to have a good enough performance that he adds himself to the pool of like available fullbacks that people aren't angry about, right? Which is very, very slim at this point.
Such a low bar.
Yeah. But so first time we saw this goal, I thought Chandler had tackled the guy. I don't know who the Cuban player was, but tackled him to begin this move. When you rewatch it, it's that the guy cuts, the ball gets away from him, and Chandler just basically steps into the ball and takes it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mean, that said, it wasn't a terrible second half from Timmy Chandler.
No, it was pretty good.
He came on at the half. Yedlin started the game, and that's about all I have to say about Yedlin's performance. Not critically, but he just didn't really have much to do, and he definitely didn't get forward. So.
Timmy Chandler was also involved in the second goal. It's Chandler's ball over the top, I believe.
Yep, you are correct.
That is for Wondolowski to then lay on the ball for Julian Green.
Right.
I want to talk about Julian Green's role in the first goal, though.
Sure.
Sorry, I'm jumping around a bit here.
No, you do that, and then we'll go back to fullbacks that people aren't mad about, because I'm about to be mad about a fullback.
We're going to add one to the list, right? Yeah. Look out.
Yep.
The first goal, Wondolowski scores it. It's a rebound off of a Julian Green shot that is saved. If you rewatch this, he maybe should not have been shooting, right?
Who, Green?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, not at all. I mean, and I think it was, in as much as Wondolowski, like the narrative is he's redeemed himself a little bit, or at least he's shown why he's there. I've seen the same thing about Julian Green, but I think Julian Green maybe knew that going into this game, because it was a lot of shooting from him. It was a lot of taking people onto the box, a lot of 1v1, getting to the end line, trying to cut back. And that works in patches, but there were also frequently...
It worked in patches against Cuba.
Right.
Right.
But in the meantime, while he was doing that, you would frequently see Jordan Morris or Chris Wondolowski or Josie Altidore standing there with their hands up like, I am wide open, pass me the ball. But I think Julian Green really wanted to show that he belongs, that he deserves to get that call up, and so he kept trying to get those shots.
There's even one of the times Cuba hits the post, which I believe we'll talk about in more detail in a little bit, begins with Julian Green shooting when he should have passed. And Altidore and I believe Bobby Wood is still there. No, Altidore and Morris both sort of, I don't know who's on the foot of this one actually, but definitely Altidore is there, throws his arms in the air. What? And everybody stops because everyone's so mad that Julian Green has taken that shot. That's what causes the breakaway.
Yeah. I mean, and so it's...
So I don't think we need to be too thrilled about his performance, is what I'm saying.
No, it's definitely a performance where he is going to be a huge chunk of the highlights because he kept doing skillful things and he kept getting shots. But then if you look at it from the wider angle and you see people running down the other channel wide open while he's doing stepovers, it becomes a little more of a nuanced performance.
If you wanted to make a highlight package of this game of US players choosing the wrong option, he would be heavily featured.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Him, and both attacking and defensively, because Cuba, as we said, hit the post twice. I think the second time they did so, it starts with Julian Green defending?
Yeah.
In the sense that he's sort of like, no, you're fine. Fabian Johnson will get him. Fabian Johnson's a defender. And then Fabian Johnson says, Steve Birnbaum will get him. Steve Birnbaum's a defender.
So both times that Cuba hit the post, it's Fabian Johnson who essentially gives up on the idea of making a tackle because he sees Steve Birnbaum and just thinks, he can do it.
Yeah.
Fabian Johnson gives up, doesn't put the effort in. I think that's... I'd very rarely say that about players. That is absolutely what happened.
Yeah. I mean, I can't really find another way to put it. It's just that you can see him running... Really, this is really what I thought about. Tom Cruise famously is like a great runner in film, right? Like if you watch the montage of him sprinting, he just looks like he was made to sprint. Eric Bana is not good at sprinting. I remember that from Hannah, that movie, where it's like him running at full speed and it's like, you look so slow. Yeah. And there was a couple different sequences from the wide angle where you could see Fabian Johnson running and he looked like Bana, not Cruise. Because it was just sort of like, you are not going at full speed, and if you are, that is a problem.
No, yeah.
And so it's like he still pursues, but it's definitely
it's a jog,
more
right?
of like,
he jogs.
Yeah. And then in that second one, the ball gets through. Steve Birnbaum comes across but can't get there in time. Chip to the back post. It's headed. It goes off the post. Fabian Johnson has no reaction to that. And if you've ever played, you know that like it's the same thing you do in FIFA or in real life, where you sort of like lean one way because you want the shot to go one way, or you like lean one way because you hope it goes wide.
You flinch or something.
And he just kind of stands there and is like, whatever.
He's
like,
just getting through that game, not getting hurt, right? I feel like a lot of the very half-hearted tackles that he makes are a thing of, I'm not really into this. I'm just going to make sure I get out of the other side of this.
Yeah. And so, again, it's frustrating to see, but you kind of understand, right? Yeah. I mean, look what happens to Birnbaum.
So how mad are we at him?
I'm frustrated, but not mad. I'm a little disappointed.
If we're picking our team to face Mexico, he's still in it, right?
Yeah, I think he has to be. Even if he maybe doesn't want to be in that position. I feel like he increasingly is sort of making it clear that he does not want to be a left back, but that's where he's going to keep being. So get used to it, big guy.
We don't need to talk about the second goal, I suppose. We've already sort of described it. Wondolowski squares to Julian Green. It's kind of unfair that he got... Well, is it unfair that he got a goal?
No. I mean, he was there. He's in position. He holds up that run so he's not offside. And then he's there to put it home.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a goal's a goal.
It puts a whole positive spin on Julian Green's performance, which I'm not absolutely sure it deserves, given how many times he made the wrong decision.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, that's what it is, right? It's like nobody was great, but nobody was terrible. Everybody was just sort of like, yeah, that's fine.
All right, final guy we should talk about is Ethan Horvath.
We should.
So it's Horvath's debut. He's only 21 years old. And the only moment I thought he was questionable, we rewatched it. It's the hit in the post moment, right? It's is it Arellano?
The second one, the headed one at the back post, yeah.
I thought it was Horvath sort of going out ready to claim the cross, then changing his mind, and that's the reason we don't get it. Right. I actually now think on second viewing, that's the reason that it hits the post instead of going in.
It's because
because he comes, right? He decides not to jump for the ball to catch it, but then he immediately defends the near post, right? So in the end, he just changes his mind but makes the right decision.
Yeah, because at that point, it's Gomez is the guy with the ball, Alberto Gomez, on the right-hand side.
Yeah.
And he could easily take a touch inside and shoot. So Horvath can't necessarily stay in the middle of the goal or kind of defend that cross. He has to cover his near post when that ball is there. Then when Gomez chips, basically Horvath has to cover the entire length of the goal, 8 yards, 24 feet. It's a decent amount of ground to have to cover on a chip. And then get there in the face of Caballero, but also, as you said, take away that near post.
Yep.
So I think in the end, it's well done by him because it easily could have been a goal from two different players.
So it looks like he's kind of lost, but what's actually happening, I think you use this phrase, he's been hung out to dry, essentially, and he does the very best you can do in that situation.
Because I think Timmy Chandler, who's marking Caballero, who gets that header, thinks there's no way this guy's just going to waltz through our defense. And then everybody kind of lets him waltz through the defense. And then he's like, oh boy, I better mark now. And then away he goes. But he's just a bit too late.
Anyone else you want to mention before we move on to the TSS Scouting Network?
No, I mean, other than that, I was happy to see Sasha Kleshtin in the lineup, but I think the kind of field limited everything that he could do. That said, he still
had some clever little touches here and there. It went unnoticed because Ian Dark and Taylor Twellman were talking about something else.
Yeah, there's that. But I also think part of the reason why you saw John Brooks make way at the half is because it looked like it was going to be Jeff Cameron pinging the long ball and John Brooks doing what he does, which is playing those 30-yard on-the-ground driven balls into feet. But outside of the couple times they were able to sort of execute that, generally speaking, that ball wasn't going to be on because of the pitch, because of the conditions. So then it sort of makes sense to, like, maybe we don't risk one of our best center backs against this opposition. Let's get him out and bring in somebody who can just defend physically.
Because what I read also is that Klinsmann basically cut a deal with Hertha Berlin to just get Brooks for the Cuba game.
I see.
So I think maybe when they saw how this game was going down, they must have thought, let's just get him out of there. Brooks did have one great tackle with his butt, though, in the first half.
He
did. You see that?
He did. And it's also, I mean...
I'm going to practice that move, see if I can get it down.
I think you should. It's also, I mean, I know this doesn't factor into decision-making at all, but it is worth noting that, I mean, national teams do have to cover the costs of a player who's injured.
Yeah.
Like, clubs demand restitution. Yeah. And so I doubt it factors in, but it is worth noting that, like, if Brooks gets injured, U.S. Soccer's getting a bill.
If Brooks gets injured, we're in worse shape for the Mexico game.
And then there's that.
Because then he has to recover and you don't know how match fit he is, right?
Important, yeah.
That's more important.
Yeah, maybe so.
Looking ahead to the next game, it is the USA versus New Zealand at RFK Stadium, which will look like a palace in comparison. Tuesday night, 8 o'clock Eastern, also on ESPN2, I believe.
And a couple of things I'd like to see from that one, just because I didn't... there's one guy that I think we've kind of forgotten to talk about.
Lyndon Gooch?
Well, yes, I'd like to see him. But the other guy is Jordan Morris, who I think looked very, very good coming on in that second half.
Yeah, apart from that left-footed touch, yes.
Yeah, but, I mean, it was a lot of movement, a lot of energy from him, a lot of enthusiasm. He does that flick, but then rather than just, like, watch the flick to Wondolowski, he then immediately turns and is in on goal and making those runs. And you can just tell that he's a player with confidence. And I wouldn't mind seeing him get a start on more solid soil.
Literally and figuratively. That game, once again, is on Tuesday. Tomorrow, Saturday, it's England v Malta. I feel like I'm the only one in this office who's been hyping this game.
Correct.
England-Malta, Gareth Southgate's debut as England manager. He said that he is starting Wayne Rooney and Theo Walcott. So he's named 2 of his starting 11, weirdly. I think because the press sort of pushed him on both of those, and he was like, yeah, but I'm not telling you the other one.
That's good. That's good.
So that game is noon on Saturday.
That's such a weird level of, like, I've only given him 2. I'm still in control.
I'm not giving him any more.
Whatever. But yeah, best of luck to your 3 Lions.
Oh, they're my 3 Lions now. You're not with me.
I mean, they're more yours than mine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I will not be watching them play Malta. You probably will.
Okay.
I got painting to do.
That's fair. I will be watching.
And watching paint dry might be more exciting than England v Malta.
Harsh. Oh, we should also talk a little about Bob Bradley.
Yeah.
So obviously Bob Bradley...
Speaking of paint drying?
We talked... I didn't say that. You said that. We talked earlier in the week about his appointment at Swansea. He did his first interview with Swansea. It's like a 9-minute YouTube video, if you watch it. He has some interesting things to say about Jurgen Klinsmann and US soccer. So apparently Klinsmann had been kind of complimentary on the appointment of Bradley, saying, yeah, good job, whatever. And Bradley said... Well, that's interesting because he wasn't that complimentary when he was
interviewing for my job.
Yeah, jostling for my job in 2010.
Yep, and demanding 3 times my salary. Yeah,
and he also mentioned that he wasn't happy with the way US soccer handled his firing. It's really interesting to hear Bradley say this stuff. 5-6 years after it happened?
Yeah. I mean, because by his own admission in that interview, he's actively not said anything.
Yeah, because his son's playing for the team, for one thing.
And maybe now it's just sort of like...
I do wonder why now it's okay. Like, why, because you're the Swansea manager, is it suddenly okay for you to say something?
I don't know, because you're in the Premier League. It's like,
is that it?
I can do what I want now, man.
It's a little bit like you've made it to the side, so you can talk whatever you want about US soccer.
It might be, but I think there's also...
It doesn't do Michael any favours.
It does not, but, I'd like to think that maybe Klinsmann is aware of the fact that they're 2 different people. Although maybe that's the problem, is that he's thought it was the former coach playing for him this whole time. But I also think that there has been, in a lot of the coverage I've seen of Bob Bradley, it tends to be very, like, he's a very direct manager, he's going to tell you how he thinks. But, like, I feel like that's all covering for... Like, yeah, he's not a high presser guy. He's not a crazy enthusiastic Jurgen Klopp manager.
Yeah.
And so there's not so much to say. And so I think if the narrative is, he's straight to the point, he tells you honestly, he hates doing interviews, then I think like he kind of has to back that up and to go in and be like, well, that's great. I enjoyed my time, and Jurgen's a great guy.
He's just looking for quotables.
I'm not necessarily looking for it, but I think is sort of backing up that reputation and sort of going at people and letting Swansea know. Because, there's a lot of criticism about, like, who's this guy and why is he here?
Yeah.
And if you come in and you're a little wishy-washy and you're perceived as weak, maybe that doesn't help you,
this is like
look
first
strong.
day in prison.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. He shivved Jurgen Klinsmann in the first day in prison. Now everyone knows what Pop Bradley's about. There we go.
So once again, Swansea's first game is away to Arsenal next weekend. We'll obviously be keeping an eye on that game and kind of crossing our fingers that everything starts off okay.
That means you're rooting for a Welsh team. You know that, right?
That's fine. I'm more rooting for Bob Bradley.
Okay.
I'll also be rooting for an Icelander.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Would that be young Mr. Gilfie?
Yeah.
Who's not that young, but still deserves a young and a mister?
Yeah.
I like it.
All right, Total Soccer Show Scouting Network.
Speaking of young?
Yeah. We have, 3 reports to read today because it's a Friday.
Yep.
These are reports about promising young players that have been sent to Taylor and I. First up, Tyler Dunaway. Tyler Dunaway is scouting Gabriel Jesus, the 19-year-old who is technically a Manchester City player.
Yep.
But he's back on loan at Palmeiras.
Yep.
All right, so Gabriel Jesus started for Brazil in their qualifier against Bolivia and scored a goal in the first half. He's been on fire since joining the men's national team after the Olympics. I've seen this goal, Taylor.
He's quite good.
It's very good. It's a combo. It's a combo with Neymar.
Not thrilled that he's going to be wearing sky blue near the end of this near the end of this year.
Maybe next year.
Yeah. Next up comes from Chris Bentley, scouting Donny van de Beek, the 19-year-old Ajax midfielder. Maybe he's not an Ajax midfielder, and that's part of the problem, as we shall soon find out. Donny is currently with the Dutch U21 team and played the full 90 in a 0-0 draw with Turkey. In the build-up to the game, Donny had some interesting comments. He told Fox Sports bluntly that he was frustrated that he wasn't getting more playing time with Ajax first team, and said he understood that they had many midfielders, but that his play has been good enough to break into the team. Then maybe he took a pause, realized what he was saying in public, and then added, but I'm okay with playing for young Ajax, and I'm happy with the playing time I've gotten. So Chris ends with, something seems rotten in Amsterdam. Well done, Chris.
That's
well
funny.
done. Yep.
Third report is from Eddie Youngs. Eddie is scouting Aymeric Laporte, the 22-year-old centre-back for Athletic Club de Bilbao. He is Basque, I believe. After a prolonged will he/won't he, says Eddie, it looks like Laporte has finally committed to the French national team. This is it, right? If you're Basque, if you're born in that region, you possibly have eligibility for France or Spain.
I believe so.
He made some noises about keeping options open, but now the centre-back seems to have committed following a call-up from Didier Deschamps. He did not play in today's 4-1 win over Bulgaria, but could get some time against the Netherlands on Monday.
There we are. So thank you to everyone who sent in scouting reports. We have many more to get through, but those come next week.
I've got one more for you.
What you got?
The US under-20s. Remember they're in that Four Nations tournament in England? They lost the opening game against Germany. Today, I saw on Twitter, that because there's no footage, they lost 5-3 to the Netherlands.
You kind of made it sound exciting. So I thought it was going to be like, today, and I was like, oh, they won? And then 5-3 loss.
They were winning at one point, but it's a 5-3 defeat to the Netherlands. Ebo Bise, who we saw play for Charleston Battery, who maybe one day will sign with Atlanta, got a hat-trick.
Yep. That's good.
That is good.
I was about to say hopefully
5 goals were conceded though.
That's the thing. I was about to say like hopefully Cameron Carter-Vickers looked good, and then I realized that they conceded 5 goals. So maybe not so much. Maybe he wasn't there. That's what I'm going to justify it with.
It's kind of weird not having footage of this. These are games that I definitely would have watched.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Really?
If anyone out there knows of U20 Four Nations footage, please email them to us, contact@TotalSoccerShow.com.
I would like that.
If you would like to join the Total Soccer Show Scouting Network, you go to TotalSoccerShow.com/subscribe. And if you'd like to hear more from the Total Soccer Show, then check back Monday when there will be more Total Soccer Show. Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to talk to me this evening and for watching Cuba v USA so other people don't have to.
Daryl Grove, right back at you, buddy. And also thank you for being on the Goalmouth podcast with me. Daryl Grove will be back hosting, doing his Monday hosting duties on Monday. Shock of all shocks.
I have a busy day on Monday.
You sure do.
But thank you seriously to everybody who has subscribed to the Goalmouth. We're off to a strong start. We're really excited about it. So we look forward to doing more of that next week. All right, until next time, it is goodbye from us. You gotta slice it.